all I was told, the Indiana Fever media, I was told by the team when she was hired, Stephanie White was hired, that she was a defensive guru. I was told that she was going to work Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark like John Stockton and Karl Malone. Folks, the Atlanta Dream set a franchise record with 113 points tonight.
The promise versus the reality, a defensive guru. That was the ultimate promise when Indiana hired Stephanie White. But on Saturday night in Atlanta, that promise crashed into a number nobody wanted to see. The Dream dropped a staggering 113 points on the Fever, setting a franchise record in a brutal 17-point blowout. The exact same building that started the night, packed with hope, ended with Caitlin Clark glaring back at her own bench in sheer frustration.
What actual adjustments did Stephanie White make at halftime? Because I swear to God, she didn't make any. And is there a reason why she keeps benching Caitlin Clark in the second quarter? Because they go to timeout, or they go to the end of the quarter. There's time in between that, yada, 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 rest, blah, blah, blah. They come back from TV commercial, Caitlin Clark's still out. Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell are still in.
The third quarter. Meltdown. The most maddening part about this loss? It didn't even start ugly. In fact, Indiana looked unstoppable early on, leading 59-56 at halftime while shooting a scorching 60% from both the floor and beyond the arc. Then the third quarter happened. Just 15 points. 15. Atlanta capitalized instantly, flipping the script to take an 84-74 lead and never looked back. A team that looked completely elite for the first 20 minutes completely fell apart in the most crucial 10 minutes of the night.
It's her heart. Caitlin tried. She tried 26 points, just like the other night, on 11 of 18 shooting. She can't do it all by herself. 11 of 18 shooting, 7 assists, 7 rebounds.
The Clark factor and visible frustration. Look, Caitlin Clark absolutely did her part. She put up 26 points and dished out 7 assists, including a blistering 13-point first quarter where she buried her first 3 three-pointers. But the flip side, she also coughed up the ball 7 times, contributing heavily to a disastrous 19-turnover meltdown. As the game slipped away, you could literally watch the frustration build on her face in real time. When the cameras caught her turning toward Stephanie White on the bench, that single look captured the tragedy of the entire second half better than any stat sheet ever could.
Stephanie White wants, but guess what? This team can't win that way. You are 9-7 after 16 games with Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, and Sophie Cunningham on this team. You are 9-7. You're barely in the playoffs right now. The job is too big for Stephanie White.
Roster flaws and out-of-sync personnel. So, why does a roster with this much raw talent keep coming apart at the seams? The front court trouble. It starts right here. Aaliyah Boston, the former #1 overall pick, was completely taken out of her rhythm by foul trouble. She picked up her 5th foul late in the third quarter, finishing with just 22 minutes on the floor. Shockingly, Coach White had a prime opportunity to challenge the call that put Boston in that hole, but chose to keep her whistle in her pocket. The depth problem. Behind Boston, the cupboard is completely bare. Indiana desperately lacks a stretch power forward who can space the floor and score, which allows opposing defenses to completely load up on Clark. The bench and ball movement. Off the bench, Sophie Cunningham was the lone bright spot, being the only reserve to crack double figures. Meanwhile, Kelsey Mitchell added 16 points, but too often forced the issue with heavy isolation play instead of moving the ball. A 9-7 record with a group this talented is simply not what anyone signed up for.
Can't. This is not the right coach. This team scoring on offense, by the way, they can't stop a nosebleed. They can't stop anything. They're like you're holding a net under a water faucet. That's not going to work.
The guru label under fire. And there's the defense, which is where that defensive guru label attached to Stephanie White really begins to sting. Atlanta scoring 113 points wasn't some fluke. Indiana has now surrendered 100 points or more in 4 of their last 5 games. For the second straight meeting, all 5 Atlanta starters scored in double figures. You have to give credit to Atlanta's coach, Carl Smesko, because he actually made the winning adjustments at the break. After Indiana torched them early, Smesko had his team switching cleaner and helping in the right spots during that pivotal third quarter. Indiana scored at will for a half, only to watch Atlanta solve them in real time. Meanwhile, the one unit that was supposed to be this coach's calling card, the defense, couldn't buy a single stop down the stretch.
Somebody in the chat today, the Ben Daniel chat, shout out, brought up Byron Scott as a potential coach for this team. Played with the Lakers. Coached with the Pacers, if I'm not going crazy. Has a connection to the franchise. That was a really good name to pull out. I've said Mark Jackson. I've said Jason. We've talked about Jason Kidd. We've talked about Bill Laimbeer. Byron Scott's a great name that was pulled out.
The coaching debate versus the reality. Check. That exact contradiction is why the coaching debate online is reaching a boiling point. The names being thrown around by fans and creators range from Byron Scott and Mark Jackson to Jason Kidd and Bill Laimbeer, the ultimate wish list that pops up whenever a fan base runs out of patience. But there is a very real, logical counterweight worth mentioning. Stephanie White is still in her first year running this specific group. This is a roster that was reshaped lightning fast around Clark, featuring new pieces who are still learning how to play together. In fact, the very coach who just beat her twice in 3 days went out of his way to call Indiana really well coached, and he genuinely meant it. Highly talented teams take time to build an identity, and Indiana's is clearly still under construction. The real question isn't whether White is a bad coach. It's whether this specific scheme with this specific personnel is ever going to click in time to matter.
But you quit worrying about us, because frankly, we look right now. Why don't you quit worrying about us and hold the franchise responsible? Well, they'll only call on certain people. What are they going to do? Quit having press conferences after the games? If everybody keeps asking questions they don't like, are they just going to... they've got media obligations. They can't keep you all out of the room. Make them...
The road ahead here is where it gets incredibly interesting, because some of this is fixable in a hurry. The upcoming schedule just handed Indiana a massive lifeline. They host the Phoenix Mercury, who currently sit at a struggling 4-12, on Monday and again on Wednesday. 2 consecutive home games against a struggling opponent is the softest possible landing spot after back-to-back beatdowns. If this group has any fight left in them, we are about to see it right now. If they split, or worse, get swept at home by a 4-12 team, the conversation surrounding Stephanie White stops being a debate and officially becomes a countdown to her exit. But what can't be fixed by Wednesday is the macro-level question hanging over this entire franchise. Is the glaring gap between Indiana's raw talent and their actual results a coaching problem, a roster construction problem, or an ugly mix of both? Because those 2 issues require entirely different solutions. A coaching problem is fixed with a sudden sideline change. A roster problem can only be fixed at the trade deadline or in the offseason by acquiring a true defensive floor-spacing stretch 4. If the front office gets this diagnosis wrong, they risk wasting the prime years of a generational superstar.